It's March 23rd, 2019 in Melbourne, Australia, and we're going to be looking at what we can learn about raising children from the Bhagavad Gita, which may surprise some of you, as you may not think of the Bhagavad Gita as a book on parenting. But although you could say the Bhagavad Gita is a book really on how to spiritualize your career, how Arjuna could spiritualize his career, it really gives instruction for all of life. So we're going to be looking at three main areas. First of all, how to teach your children the real sources of happiness, how to teach them holistically, and then how to engage their nature in a way that will be satisfying for them and can be used in Krishna's service. And I really believe that that is the most important topic that we can look at. I noticed talking to some families here and recently in Malaysia that many times the children will become involved in Krishna consciousness and they're enthusiastic, and then they hit like 12, 13, 14 years of age and they kind of drop off. Yes? Is this accurate? That I've been hearing this? So I believe that a lot of this, thank you. Thank you, sir. So I believe that a lot of this problem stems from not engaging people according to their nature. Okay, so the sources of happiness. We talked a little bit this morning in the Bhagavatam class about how people are being inculcated and indoctrinated and groomed and pushed to think that we'll be happy in life. And any of you who were here this morning, so what's basically the propaganda, how you will be happy in life? Earn more money. Okay, what was the first one, you remember? Be a what? Be what kind of a person? Moral. Be a moral, honest person. And how are you going to earn money? Make plans and work hard. And then if you have a lot of money, you'll be able to enjoy your senses. You'll get a beautiful romantic partner and a happy family. And what about liberation? Don't worry about it. When you die, you're dead. So this is the way that we've been trained in materialistic society. Isn't that a fact? Now, we should say, this is not a politically correct thing to say, but if you're raising your children going to the regular schools and watching the regular media, this is also the message that they're going to be getting over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Be a good moral person. Do you need God to be a moral person? No, they say you don't need God. I mean, if you want to have him, that's okay, you know, we'll tolerate it. But it's not necessary. And just make good plans, work hard, make a lot of money. If you have a lot of money, you can have a beautiful house, beautiful car, beautiful husband, beautiful wife, intelligent children, good food, which you'll then be happy, and that's it. That's all there is. And if you're interested in liberation, just, you know, get liberated from communism or liberated from class or gender problems, right? That's the only kind of liberation that's being offered. So do keep in mind that if your children are being in that environment, they're going to be constantly bombarded with that message. You're going to be going against the grain. So, by the way, I'm going to talk about nature last because you weren't here, so I thought I'd put that at the end because I wanted to make sure you were here for that. So if you're wondering, why am I here? It'll be. I'm going to talk about the last thing instead of the first. So if we're giving a different message about happiness, and just think about this a little bit. So who's more expert at giving their message? Krishna is the most expert, indeed. But who's more expert in their external presentation? The materialists have really got it together, isn't it? With their computer games and their movies and TV shows and their books and their schools. And it will appear to our children that we're this teeny tiny minority who are saying something odd. And do remember that the modern society is saying, yeah, you can worship God if you want to be moral, but that's an antiquated, primitive way of being. And the only use of worshiping God is to make you a moral person because you're afraid of going to hell and you want to go to heaven. And religion is going to be presented to your children in a very pejorative way. Religion is being presented in the modern schools, modern media, in a very negative way. So any of you who watch movies and TV, if you think about when's the last time a really heroic, cool person in the movies or TV shows has been genuinely religious and been set in modern times? You're really going to have a hard time thinking of any kind of character like that. So maybe if it's a show about, 100 years ago or 200 years ago, they might show someone as being very religious. But anything set in modern times, someone who's really cool, really heroic, how many of them are religious? How many times in TV, movies, do you see people praying? Right? And in the children's books, God is just absent. Now, we're going to look at three kinds of happiness, three ways of finding happiness given in the Bhagavad Gita. And you'll find that these are not generally the ways that are being propounded in modern society. The first is through sacrifice. Now, sacrifice here, when we use the word yajna in the Bhagavad Gita, it does not mean giving up something you like for a higher cause. It's not like the dictionary definition in English of the word sacrifice. What it means is religious rituals. I'm using the word rituals because I just don't know of a better word to use. Some sort of ceremony, we could say. Some kind of regular way that you connect with God that has some sort of structure to it. Again, rituals is a very negative term. But doing something on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on some sort of a cyclical basis, where you're connecting with Krishna, where you're connecting with the divine. And Krishna explains in the 3rd chapter of Bhagavad Gita, he says, in the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generation of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, be thou happy by this yajna sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So here Krishna is giving the key how to be happy materially and to get liberation. If you want to be happy on every level, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, if you want to be a moral person, if you want to have prosperity, if you want to enjoy your senses, and if ultimately you want to be enlightened and get free of the material world, one needs to connect regularly with the divine, regularly with God, in some sort of authorized way as given in the scriptures. Not just I'm just going to connect with God. I'm just doing my own concocted way of connected with God. Just like if you want to connect with me, you need my proper email address, right? Yes. It was terrible when I was booking an airline ticket a month ago. I accidentally typed, instead of .com, I typed .con. And then, why isn't the receipt going to my email? I typed in the wrong letter, and I'd call the airline, and it was a big problem. And I had to call them like 5 times. Oh, it's fixed now, and then it wasn't fixed, and it wasn't fixed from one letter wrong. So if you don't do things according to the Shastra, you may not actually connect. So why does it make us happy? Krishna's saying here that if we do regular yajna, we will become happy, both materially and spiritually. Now, by the way, this yajna should not be done mechanically. Although it appears to be a ritual, we should not engage our children in it ritualistically. Okay? Just like my father used to call me every Saturday. Every Saturday morning he would call me. Talk to me, talk to my husband, talk to the kids. But it wasn't mechanical. He was calling because he loved me, and I talked to him because I loved him. It wasn't like, oh, okay, I have this ritualistic obligation to speak to my father. So we want to train our children in regular practice of connecting with Krishna, but not ritualistically. Not, okay, it's our puja time, okay, we got to be in here and do our puja, and we got to do our japa, and we got to read the books, and we have to do this because this is our culture, and this is our religion, and this is what it's supposed to be. That's not very satisfying, is it? And we need to understand, if we're going to engage our children in regular connection with the divine, why does that make us happy? Anyone have some idea as to why that will bring us happiness? Yes?
I'd have to say it's making a commitment with your deeper self and honoring it.
Very nice. And actually it really is your deeper self, because the self of the self is God. He's called the Param Atma, the super self. So it's making a commitment to your ultimate self, the soul, to connect with its source. Yes. Excellent. I really like that. Yes?
Krishna is Satchidanand, means he is the source of happiness, and you connect, so obviously you can.
That's also, what a wonderful, beautiful answer. Krishna is the source of all happiness. When you connect with him, you feel it. And in fact, all material happiness is coming from him, isn't it? He says he's the taste of water, the light of the sun, right? Everything. He's adventure. Everything that we feel happiness from is actually Krishna. So generally we connect just with his energy, separate from him. But if we connect directly with him, then we get the full scope of happiness. Some other reasons why regular connection with the divine will bring your children happiness. Some other thoughts? Yes?
This makes us feel that we are part of it.
Oh yeah, makes you feel that you're a part of it. And all of us want to be a part of something greater than ourselves. Everybody wants that. Even if it's just your family. You know, everybody wants to feel that I have some meaning and some connection other than just, you know, living day to day. Yes? Some other thoughts?
It is different than the material happiness.
It's very different from material happiness, but it also brings material happiness indeed. And why is it different from material happiness?
Because it's temporary, material happiness is temporary.
Okay, it's eternal. Material happiness is temporary. I might not feel that right away, though. What could I experience right away in regular connection with Krishna?
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind, all right? It makes one peaceful. It makes one equipoised. Most of our distress, or maybe all of our distress, comes because internally we're not equipoised. It's also genuine. It's on the platform of the soul. So how are we going to teach our children that happiness comes from regular connection with Krishna? Well, first of all, they need to do that. We need to make that a part of our life. Just like I'm sure all of you make sure your children brush their teeth and bathe and wear clean clothes and do their homework. You make sure they do that. Correct? Yes? You know, go, well, if you want to brush your teeth, it's okay. And if you don't want to brush your teeth, that's cool too. I hope you don't do that. You want to go to school? Okay. You don't want to go to school? Well, fine. Whatever you want. No, you make sure that they're getting an education. You make sure they're cleaning their teeth. You make sure they're brushing their hair. Correct? So in the same way, you want to make sure there's regular connection with Krishna, but not mechanically. Not ritualistically. And you want to ensure that you and your children are actually experience that source of happiness from connection. Okay, another thing that Krishna emphasizes is that real happiness comes from within, from being self-satisfied, and not from having a lot of external stuff. Now, it is true that sometimes having some nice external stuff is helpful. That's certainly true. It's nicer to have good food than bad food. You'd rather have a phone with a long battery life than a phone with a short battery life. It's nice to have a car that starts when you turn the key. Yeah, I mean, it's true. It's nice to have shoes that don't have holes in them. I mean, it's a fact. It's not that those things don't have any effect on us whatsoever. But if we're not peaceful inside, you can have the best shoes and the best phone and the best food, and the best friends, and it doesn't matter. Isn't that correct? I'm sure we've all, unfortunately, I'm sure we've all experienced that we've been very disturbed in our mind about something, and it can be anything. It can be something that 2 hours later seems completely insignificant, or a week later you can't even remember what you were upset about, correct? And in that mood, nothing brings you any happiness. When there's something that's bothering us, that's upsetting us, that's worrying us, when our equilibrium is off, we can have good food and we can have our loving family and our best friends and it's a sunny day and we're not sick and we have enough money in the bank and our shoes don't have holes in it and our phone battery lasts all day and we're still not happy. Am I correct? We all have this experience. Yes? And we have the reverse experience. You know, sometimes everything's going wrong. But we're peaceful within and it just doesn't really matter so much. You know, your car doesn't start and you think, okay, well, I get a day off from work. Jai, Hari Bol. You know, we have this kind of experience also, that we just say, okay, I'm just going to go with it, whatever. We're lost. Well, we're having an adventure. My shoe just broke. Oh, I get to connect with the earth. Okay, fine. That just happened to me in Mayapur, actually. So we have that experience also. We have the experience that, you know, things don't go the way that we want. There's some difficulty, big difficulty, little difficulty. But if we're equipoised within, we're happy. So this is one of the most important things we can teach our children. Now keep in mind that society is screaming at them, it's all what you own, what your status is, what your, you know, and why is society screaming this at them? Because that's the way people sell things. Do keep in mind that all the TV shows are just props for the commercials. You know that, right? They're just to keep you glued so that you'll watch the commercials and buy the stuff. And to put you in the frame of mind that buying the stuff will make you happy. All right, now we want to teach our children how to be equipoised. So Krishna says in 259, the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense objects remains, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Param drisva nivartate. All right, so I'm going to teach all of you a very, very, very simple process. It's very simple, it works. You'll be very happy. It's something that you can and should please teach to your children. And this is called How to Become Free from All Attachment and Aversion. Is that funny? That's good. How to be equipoised. Now, it's true if you're totally absorbed in Krishna's name, form, quality, and pastimes, being equipoised happens naturally. That's a fact. But in practicing sadhana bhakti, part of our sadhana is learning how to keep our mind equipoised. When Krishna explains the Falldown sequence in Bhagavad Gita 262 to 263, he says you think about something, and you think about it, and then you get attached to it, and then you really want it, and then you get angry, and then your intelligence gets bewildered. And when our intelligence is bewildered, we're not happy, even if we have great shoes, great phone, great friends, great house, great food, great everything, right? We just demonstrated that, correct? Okay. So what does he say the cure is after that? Right after those verses, he gives the cure in 264, where he says, don't have attachment or aversion, regulate your senses, and then you'll get Krishna's mercy. He said you'll get the prasadam of the Lord. That doesn't mean a gulabjaman, it means you'll get the grace of the Lord to overcome the mind. And when Arjuna said, Chanchalahi mana Krishna, the mind is very restless, it's always flickering, then Krishna says, yes, it's undoubtedly difficult to control the restless mind, but it's possible by suitable practice and detachment. So what is the practice and detachment so that one can become equipoised and not be affected by lust, anger, envy, greed, illusion, right? Krishna says that too. Trividam narakasyedam dwaram nasanamatmana. That one should give up this lust, anger, and greed. So many times when people think about becoming equipoised, we think about simply becoming adverse. We think, okay, I'm going to be equipoised, I'm not going to be angry, I'm not going to be sad, I'm not going to be grieving, I'm not going to be disappointed, I'm not going to be bitter, I'm not going to be lonely. What are some other negative emotions? Confused, depressed, hopeless, helpless, lost, discouraged. I'm not going to be those things, and when those feelings come into my body and mind, I'm going to kill them. Oh, there's anger. I am not going to be angry. I'm 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 not going to be lusty. I'm not going to be lusty. I'm not going to be lusty. Does that work? No, it doesn't work. In fact, what happens is the more you push against those things, the stronger they get. Have you noticed that? And eventually they kind of explode. Yes? So some people say, well, what you do is just express them then. Whenever you're angry, just yell at somebody, throw something. Whenever you're sad, just cry all day. And then you won't be repressing everything. So that's another philosophy. And then what we do in modern society is we just try to numb it. Yeah? So we find out that if we push it all down, it gets stronger and then it explodes and makes us physically ill also. And if you express it, you very quickly lose all of your friends and your family, correct? And you don't even like yourself so much anymore. So what are you going to do? So then people numb it. They drink alcohol, they take tobacco, they smoke marijuana, they watch TV and movies, they play video games, or they work really, 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 really hard, so they never have time to think about what they're feeling. So those are all escaping. Right? This is the main way that these are the three main ways that materialistic people deal with all of the disturbances in their mind. They try to deny them, to kill them, either unconsciously suppress them or consciously repress them. Or they try to express them, or they try to escape them. Do any of those work? No. So that's not the method. Okay, so if you're teaching your child to control his or her anger or sadness or whatever by repression, it actually even makes you physically ill. And eventually it all comes out. Right? And if you teach them to just express it, then they're going to be rather an obnoxious person or a lonely person. And if you teach them to just escape it, then they're going to get into something that's intoxicating. If not chemically intoxicating, then electronically intoxicating or busyness intoxicating. So what we want to do instead is train our children to be free from attachment and aversion. So how you do that, it's not really a very difficult thing at all. Krishna explains in the 5th chapter and the 13th chapter and some other place that I can never remember and I keep forgetting to look it up, that we are simply the observer. These emotions are not me. I am not this body, I am not this mind. These different disturbances are simply chemical reactions happening in the body that the mind then identifies with. That's all they are. That's it. The senses of the body are responding to certain stimuli in the world by having different chemical reactions in our body. The mind interprets those chemical reactions as a particular emotion and identifies with it, to the point that we'll say, I am sad. As if that's our identity. Who are you? I'm sad. Hi, sad. I mean, even that kind of language. I am angry. I am sad. So a little better than that is, I feel angry. But even better than that is, oh, there's anger in my mind. There's anger in my body. Because that's actually the truth. And it's not even that there's anger in your body. There's, you know, oh, my heart's beating faster. That's interesting. And I'm sweating. And to just look at what's happening in the body as an observer. I had a very dramatic experience of this recently in Mayapur, that there was one young man who was, I'd seen him be in a drama, but I actually don't even know his name. Anyway, he was very, 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 very angry. And he was talking to one woman around my age and expressing how angry he was. So she was trying to calm him down, and so I went past and I tried to say some things. And then finally I said to him, imagine that your anger is just some creature that you're looking at. And within 2 seconds, he was completely calm. You know, these things are not really us. It's like a show on a screen in a shop that sells TVs. You know, you go into a store that sells television sets, sells monitors, and they always have something playing on the monitor so you can see the quality of the thing, right? Correct? So you walk past, and on the monitor, you know, somebody's getting married, and another monitor, somebody's shooting somebody. Does it affect you emotionally? No, because you're not identifying with it. If you were actually watching the show, you'd start to identify with it. And then you'd be all happy when the people got married, and you'd be all scared when somebody got shot. But when you're just walking past it, you have another business. You know, you're there to buy some, I don't know, apples or something. You know, and you don't identify with it. Srila Prabhupada gave the example of a business person in an automobile. And there's a driver of the car, and the business person's sitting in the back seat while the driver is driving. And Prabhupada said the business person is aware that the car is stopped, or the car is turning left, or that the light is red. It's not that the person is not aware. But they're thinking of their own business. They're not identifying with the car. So you want to teach your children to be focused on thoughts of Krishna, and to simply observe the emotions and neither try to enjoy them nor kill them. So how many of you have been to Vrindavan, India? How many of you have been to Vrindavan, India? Okay. So in Vrindavan, India, there's a lot of rhesus monkeys, yeah? So a lot of you are laughing, but they're not always so funny, you know. They can be very violent. And they're very mischievous. So if you ever stay in a place in Vrindavan, do you feed the monkeys at your place? What happens if you feed the monkeys at your place? They'll go to the top of your building you're staying in, and they'll play with the water tank.
What?
And they'll disconnect the water tank. You'll get a flood and you won't have any water. Please don't ask me how I know this. You know, they'll play with your laundry. You'll hang up your nice, clean, wet clothes to dry. Don't ask me how I know this either. I didn't get out my phone fast enough to take a photograph. But the teenage monkeys, teenagers are problems in every species. You know, the teenage monkeys had taken my clothes off the line, and they were trying to figure out how to put on a sari. I mean, they really were. They were all wrapped up in the thing, you know. So that's why you don't feed the monkeys by your house. You know, if you feed the monkeys by where you're staying, your nice clean clothes will have muddy paw prints on it. Yes? Yes?
So is this where monkey madness came from?
Probably. But do you kill the monkeys? Do you injure them? No. So you neither feed them nor do you injure them. You leave them alone. They're Krishna's monkeys. Actually, you shouldn't even really stare at them. They'll take that as aggressive behavior and they may attack you. So you leave them alone. You don't hurt them and you don't feed them. So all of the desires, materialistic thoughts, emotions that go through our body and mind are just like these Vrindavan monkeys. If you feed them, they will get muddy paw prints all over your nice, clean, wet laundry. They'll break your water tank and flood your house. They'll shake the bars on your windows. That's what happens if you feed them. And if you hurt them, Krishna will be angry, isn't it? And the other monkeys might be angry too and might come back and attack you. So with our emotions and our thoughts, don't feed them and don't kill them. Let them be. If you leave the monkeys alone, they'll find someplace else to go. They will. They won't hang around. They'll move on. They're nomadic. So our emotions and our materialistic emotions and thoughts and desires are all nomads. They won't stay. Just leave them alone. Focus on something higher and observe them. Now, this should happen to a large extent automatically if we're chanting Hare Krishna with attention. When we chant japa and kirtan with attention and love, this ability to realize ourselves as the observer becomes more and more and more pronounced. But it is also something that Krishna recommends that we do intentionally as part of our devotional practice. And if you can teach this to your children, they will be very benefited for their entire life. Now, ultimately, we should practice detachment and practice connection with the divine because we want to have love, not so we can just be happy in this world and so we can be peaceful and so we can be undisturbed. So we also want to train our children that the best way to happiness is love, even from a material point of view. People are much happier if they have someone to love and they are loved than if they don't have any love in their life and they have everything else. Yes? There's volumes of research to this effect. And so the ultimate lovable person is Krishna. And certainly we should teach them to love Krishna. And this should be teaching that we're doing on a regular basis, every day. Have some time of regular connection with the Lord. Practice equilibrium toward the material thoughts and emotions, and work at developing love for Krishna. So the next point we're going to look at is holistic education. So, of course, one of the main tenets of our Krishna consciousness movement is, you're not that body. You're not that body, you're not that mind. It's one of the most basic principles of spiritual life. Right? Now, jayate miyate va chidnayam budva bhavite va navuyaha ajona jasasvachoyam purano nahanyate hannimane shrire. So we talk a lot about holistic education. And holistic education means certainly you want to educate children mentally, intellectually, emotionally. They should know how to, do mathematics, and they should know something about history and something about geography and something about biology, and they should know how to read and how to write and all that kind of stuff. They should know how to have good relationships in this world, social education. They should get physical education. They should have exercise and sports and be fit and healthy. But we also have to take care of the soul. Now, one thing that I see particularly, I think the majority of people here are originally from India, yeah? Yes? How many of you were born in India? Okay. About 2/3 of you. So, I hope this is okay, but what I see is that people who are born in third world countries tend to have a lot of anxiety about the material side of life. Those of us who are born in first world countries don't generally have that much anxiety. We don't worry so much about, am I going to get a good job? Am I going to get food to eat? Am I going to have a place to live? We just don't generally. I mean, unless we grew up in a slum in a first world country. But when you grow up in third world countries, there tends to be kind of this overarching anxiety. My kid has got to get into the best school and into the most high status, most high earning career. And that is the focus of my kid's life all the time. You're in Australia, you can breathe. Just breathe. It's okay. That's what you came here for, I assume, yeah? You came here so you could relax about the material side of life. Isn't that why you came here? So do it. Don't bring this intense anxiety with you here. You don't need it here. You can literally breathe here. I have a thing on my phone that tells me air quality. You know, I was in Malaysia, and before that I was in India for like 5 months, and every day I would get a notice, terrible air quality. Go inside, turn on the AC. I come to Australia, wonderful air quality, go outside and breathe. But not only do you literally have good air quality, you have a society where living materially a comfortable life does not require going to the best school and having the most prestigious, high-paying jobs. Am I correct? You don't have to be the top of 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 the top to have a comfortable life here. Yes? So like, you can take the pressure off your kids. You really can take the pressure off your kids. Okay? You can take the pressure off yourself. You can take the pressure off your kids. They will most likely eat just fine and have a very comfortable house and a nice car and a nice job without pushing them so hard. And you can actually have time for spiritual life. Wow. Isn't that what you're doing here in this room? So please, with your children, make sure they have time for spiritual life. Make sure they have time for spiritual life. Put as much emphasis and as much energy and as much enthusiasm into their spiritual life. Because material life ultimately is not very important, relatively speaking. I'm not saying they shouldn't get educated. I mean, I have a PhD. I'm not saying they shouldn't get educated. I'm not saying they shouldn't be physically healthy. I'm not saying they shouldn't learn. But that shouldn't be everything. So the Bhagavad Gita is telling, Krishna tells Arjuna, fight expertly. He's not telling Arjuna, you know, you don't have to earn a living. In fact, when Arjuna says that, he says, oh, you know, my career's too hard, let me just give it up. And Krishna's like, okay, you want to do that, go to the forest, sit on deerskin, you know, look at your nose. And Arjuna says, that's too hard, I can't do that. He says, well, okay then, get up and fight. So Krishna's not encouraging that we negate the material side of life or negate being expert in our life, which is what we're going to get to in about a minute. But he is emphasizing the spiritual. So please, those of you who were born and raised in India, those of us in the West are going to you for spiritual knowledge. Use it. It's ridiculous that I, a New Yorker, am educating Indians about spiritual life. That's completely ridiculous. It's yours. So now you have the best of both worlds. You're in a developed Western country. You've got it. You made it. Develop the spiritual richness of your tradition. And those of you who were born in India, you know, it's already there. For me, I have to work at it. You know, for you, it's there. It's there for you to access. Give that to your children. Make it an important part of your life, not something you rush through. Okay, offer your obeisances, light the lamp, go to school. Yeah, I've seen this. I've stayed in devotees' houses where it's like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Get ready, come on, do you have your homework? Do you have your bag? Do you have your... Okay, offer your obeisances to the deities. Okay, good. Yes, pranams. Get in the school bus, hurry up. Oh my God. Phew. I'm stressed. It's only 6 o'clock in the morning. You know? Have some real quality time for spiritual life with your children. All right, now, finally, what I really think is one of the most important things we can talk about. And I really think that this is one of the main keys to enthusing our teenagers and our young adults in Krishna consciousness. And I speak about this to some extent when I talk about the 4 keys for Krishna conscious education, which I've taught here before, and decided not to teach tonight. Decided to teach this one instead. And this is engaging our children according to their natural tendencies. Discovering what our children's natural tendencies are, nurturing those, training the child in those, connecting the child's natural tendencies with their source of livelihood, and connecting the child's natural tendencies with the specific service that they do for Lord Chaitanya's mission. So Krishna makes this point very strongly in the Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita 3:33, he said, even a person of knowledge acts according to his or her own nature. For everyone follows the nature acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? And then he repeats this in the 18th chapter at the end of Bhagavad Gita, 18:45 to 47. So anytime a teacher repeats something, it's important. And anytime a teacher uses something in a summary, it's important. So he says, by following one's qualities of work, every person can become perfect. By worship of the Lord, who's the source of all beings and is all-pervading, a person can attain perfection through performing one's own work. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's own nature are never affected by sinful reactions. So Krishna makes this point very clearly, and he says to Arjuna, you have a choice. You can act according to your nature under my direction and be happy, or you can act according to your nature under the direction of illusion and be vanquished. My dear friends, those are our only two choices. We have a particular nature. We can use it for Krishna in a proper way and we'll be happy. We can use it in illusion in an improper way and be unhappy, and that's it. The nature Krishna is talking about is not something that can ordinarily be changed in this lifetime. Just like we each have a certain bodily configuration. Now, you could go to a surgeon with a knife and try to change it. That's very violent, isn't it? A very violent means of trying to change your nature. And you're not really changing it. You know, if you have a huge nose and you go to a surgeon to make your nose smaller, your children will still be born with large noses. You know, or if you dye your hair. You know, when my hair started growing gray, I thought about dyeing it, and I hope I'm not offending anybody. But I would see people with gray hair who had dyed their hair and the gray was coming in, and I'm like, no, not doing that. I thought better just accept it from day one, you know. I mean, it always looks fake, right? And the real roots end up showing anyway. So that's just our physical nature, but it's the same with our psychological nature. It is what it is, what it is, what it is, what it is. The question is how you use it. The question is what you do with it. So what do we mean by one's nature? Now, by nature, we don't mean like, are you a nice person or are you an obnoxious person? That's not what we mean. It's not you can say, well, it's my nature to be obnoxious. Krishna says I can't change it. That's not what we're saying. If you're obnoxious, you're using your nature poorly. Okay? So what do we mean by nature? So let's ask I really need participation for this. Okay? All right? One of the downsides of people born and raised in India is you tend to be very passive. We listen to the teacher quietly. We only say something if we have the right answer, and we are sure that it is the right answer. Otherwise, we say nothing. So, there is not a right answer for these questions I'm about to ask. So don't look for a right answer. It's a right answer for you. There isn't like a right answer. It's a right answer for you. So all of us like to be with people, and all of us like to get work done and like to get tasks done. But if you had a choice, what do you prefer doing? Being with people or getting something done? So how many of you prefer being with people? You'll put aside something you need to get done to be with people. How many would prefer to get something done? You'll put aside being with people to get something done. Okay. All right, now, all of us are sometimes outgoing and sometimes reserved. But just like I taught a class earlier today with, I don't know, about 60 kids. And of all the kids, I don't know, there were probably about 8 or 9 of them who kept raising their hand and saying things. And the other kids were all quiet. or they were just talking to their friend. So some of us are more outgoing and some of us are more reserved. Okay, so we're all a little of both, and in some situations we'll be more outgoing, in some situations we'll be more reserved. But if you had to choose overall, how many of you would you say that you're more outgoing than reserved? It's always a minority. How many would say that you're more reserved than outgoing? Okay, it's always a majority. It's always like about 70%. Okay, then there's cautious and risk-taking. So again, all of us have to take some risks, or we wouldn't get out of bed. You know, you have to take some risks if you're going to function in life. And all of us have to be cautious about some things, or we get hit by cars. So none of us are 100% cautious or 100% risk-taking. But if you had to choose, am I overall a more cautious person, or am I overall a more risk-taking person? How many would say overall they're more cautious? How many would say overall they're more risk-taking? Okay. Then this is a really interesting one. Are we motivated more by what we could call towards or away from? So people who are motivated more by towards things are the people who, whenever they do something good, internally praise themselves. You nailed that one. Wow. They're more excited by what they can achieve, by their goals. They tend to focus on what they've done right. And then the away from people, they more focus on what they want to avoid. They're more likely to motivate themselves by being an inner critic. And this tends to be also how we may relate with others. You know, when you read something, do you look for the beautifully written sentences or the punctuation mistakes? You know, which way are you going? The towards or the away from? So again, we're all a little bit of each. We're all a little bit of each. We all see both the good and the bad in ourselves and in others. But we tend to have a certain way that we focus on that's a little bit more than the other. So who would say I'm a towards person? I'm more a towards person. My goodness. And who would say I'm more an away from person? And some of you aren't anything. You don't motivate yourself at all. I just kind of go through the day sort of blank. I never notice when I do anything good. Never notice when I do anything bad. Never notice when anybody else does anything good. Never notice when anybody else does something bad. Okay, that's very interesting. Or maybe you just don't want to admit it if you're very critical of yourself. I don't know. So all these qualities are useful for different things. By the way, if someone's going to be an inspector, do you want them to be a toward person or an away from person? Everybody? If they're an inspector, do you want them to be a toward person or an away from person? Toward? If they're an inspector? Really? No, you want them to find the problems. The person inspecting your airplane before you take off, do you want them to look at the airplane and say, this part's working great? Is that what you want? No, you want them to find the problems. You understand? What about a newspaper editor? A toward or away from person? Away from. You want them to find the mistakes. Wow, look at that beautiful poetry. Publish it. What about the spelling error? Who cares? Right? So, these are not bad or good things. They're bad or good in different situations. Who do you want to do the accounting? A risk taker or a cautious person? Who do you want to go preach in Saudi Arabia? A risk taker or a cautious person? You know, they're all good in different situations. One type isn't good, one type isn't bad. There's no nature that's bad, and there's no nature that's good. You know, and then there's people who look at the big picture and people who look at the details. Right? Some of us, we want to see the big picture, big visionaries. And someone starts talking to us about the details and we're like, huh? And someone else, they want to learn all the details. They really want to examine everything. So who here would say they're a big picture person? Always the minority. And who says they're a detail person? Okay. Then some of us are what's called more sequential, and some of us are what's called more random. You can also call that linear and lateral. So if you're a linear person, you like to do outlines. If you're a lateral person, you like to do mind mapping. So a linear person, they'll even take ideas, concepts, emotions, and organize it logically. And a linear person, they're just going to relate to these things intuitively. Right? So some people work more intuitively and some people work more analytically. We can put it that way. So who would say that, and everyone has some both, who would say that they're more intuitive? And who would say that they're more analytical? Again, these are good for different things. If you're going to go to a therapist, would you rather they be more intuitive or analytical? Analytical? Really? A therapist? No, you want them more intuitive. You want them more connecting with you empathically. You don't want them analyzing your emotions. Do you like that? Anybody want their emotions analyzed? Ugh. I mean, we call them an analyst, but when they do that, it's actually distasteful. We want some therapist who's going to connect with us empathically. Does that make some sense to everybody? Okay, now let's look at the 6 opulences. Does anybody know what the 6 opulences are? Sanskrit names of the 6 opulences. Anybody know? Aishwarya. Okay, let's look first at Aishwarya. So Aishwarya is connected to the Sanskrit word Ishwara. Ishwara means a controller. So these 6 opulences are 6 ways to be rich. There's 6 ways to feel prosperous. There's 6 ways to feel that you have a prosperous, rich life. Now, we would all like all 6 opulences. Krishna has all of them in full. But there's certain opulences that we like better than others and that are more important to us. And this also indicates our nature. So Aishwarya is about control. So people who like the prosperity of Aishwarya, they're going to be probably leaders. Or at least they want a lot of autonomy in their own life. They're not going to like other people telling them what to do. They're probably not going to want to be in some 9 to 5 where they have to punch in and punch out and somebody gives them a direction of every single thing they want to do. They want to have some leadership over others, or at least they want to have some autonomy over their own life. Sometimes these people are also interested in power. Power is not necessarily, again, a bad thing. You can use power for good, isn't it? Yes. These are people who like to influence others. They have a broad area of influence. They're able to direct other people. Okay? Another one of the opulences. Vairagya. Vairagya is I think, the most interesting of the 6 opulences. Vairagya, without attachment. Many times we think of Vairagya as something automatically spiritual, but it's also an opulence, a richness. And even materialistic people, there are many of them who like Vairagya, detachment. So the richness or the prosperity of Vairagya is when you're happy with simplicity. A lot of freedom. You have the freedom to go where you want, do what you want. It's a little different from Aishwarya, that maybe you can control your own life. But let's say a traveling musician probably has some attachment to Vairagya. Or forest ranger who wants to live out in the forest very simply would be somebody who really enjoys Vairagya. They enjoy detachment. Or someone who's happy to work in a job even if it doesn't pay a lot of money. You know, if there's other perks to the job, they don't so much care about the money. They don't so much care about having a lot of things in life. People who have careers where they work, you know, in some impoverished area as an aid worker, as a charity worker, where they're not making a lot of money, but they're doing something good for the world, would have to be someone who enjoys Vairagya. Okay, what's another one of the opulences? Virya. So virya means strength. It could also literally mean sexual potency, but it means health. Health and strength. It can also mean mental strength. So some enjoyment of virya is, of course, anyone who works in sports, yoga, physical yoga like hatha yoga, dance, anything that's involving the strength and grace of the body. A lot of the construction careers, any of those physical careers where you need a lot of strength, firefighters would have to really enjoy virya. Anyone who works in health industries, helping yourself and others become healthy, would also be people who enjoy this opulence of virya. Okay? What's another one of the opulences? Yasha. Yasha means fame. Now, Yasha in the Bhagavatam is the child of Kirti and Dharma. So Kirti means people are talking about you. It's related to the word kirtan. And Dharma means you're doing good things. So Kirti and Dharma means they're talking about you for doing good things. A lot of people get Kirti, but they don't have Kirti for Dharma. Isn't that a fact? A lot of people are famous, people talk about them, but they talk about them for reasons other than them doing something dharmic. So Yasha means you like the richness of other people praising you for your good deeds. You like to be known as a good person. This is the wealth of community. This is the wealth of community. People who enjoy having a family, who enjoy having a community. On the highest level, this would be people who enjoy being in government, where they have expanded fame. But this kind of richness in their life. Some people don't care. Some people are like, I don't care what you say about me. Or I don't care. If I have 2 good friends, that's enough. So, not everybody's like, but some people really like that. They really like knowing, 100 people, having all kinds of connections, a whole network of connections where people really trust them and they can rely on their friend. They can negotiate this and that and the other thing, right? Okay, another one of the opulences. So far we have 4. Gyan. So Gyan means knowledge. Now, of course, everybody wants some knowledge about something. But this relates to people who find prosperity and richness in learning things. They always want to learn something new. They're very curious. They love amassing knowledge. Like to study things and read things and investigate things. Maybe it's taking things apart physically. Maybe it's just, studying documentaries or reading books in the library or whatever. But always wanting to learn and understand and figure out things. And again, not everybody's like that. Some people are like, okay, I know what I need to do, and that's enough. I don't need to know about everything. And the last one? Shri. So Shri means beauty, but it also means splendor. And Shri is also, like Aishvarya, deals with leadership, but it deals more with leadership through charisma rather than power. Shri deals with the richness of having, beautiful clothes, beautiful paintings in your home. Listening to beautiful music, having attractive gardens. But also just, again, maybe it can have to do with leadership, but a different kind of leadership, inspirational leadership, a charismatic leadership. Something to do with splendor and grace. Anyone who's into gymnastics or dance, there'd be some combination of virya and Shri, where they want strength but also grace. Now, each of us wants all of these, but also some are more important to us than others. I'd like you to think for a minute. What to you is a rich life? Is it important to have autonomy and leadership? Are you interested particularly in health and strength and physical activity? Are you interested in freedom and renunciation? Are you interested in knowledge? Are you interested in community and family? Are you interested in splendor and beauty and charisma? So think about this for a minute. There's usually going to be one that's primary for you. There's one of them which is like, hey, I don't have that one, my life's not worth anything. And that one that's most important to you might not be important to somebody else. That might not be at the top of someone else's list. And you could probably rank them. How we define a rich, prosperous life is also very indicative of our nature. Someone who doesn't enjoy Shri should not be put in charge of decorating the temple. I mean, I've been to temples where the physical building was designed beautifully, but the people that take care of it think it's a warehouse. You know, I was in one temple that shall remain unnamed, where, you know, in the prasadam hall, there was one porcelain sink and one stainless steel utilities sink. And then there were random signs everywhere at all different heights. And the artwork was just posters, unframed posters, stuck up with blue tack in various places. There were mismatching chairs everywhere. And then you go in the entrance, and this was a brand new building and a gorgeous building. And you go in the entrance of the temple. As soon as you walk into the temple, you see all the mops and the brooms and everything. That was the first thing that you... It's like whoever is in charge of this place does not find Shri to be a very important part of their life. Which is fine for somebody else with a different job. Does this make sense to everybody? Right? And you don't put someone in charge of a leadership position that has no interest either in Shri or Aishvarya. They just won't care. Everybody can just do whatever they want. I don't care. Right? So I know some devotees who are traveling musicians and they write songs about philosophy. What do you think is most important to them? Vairagya. What else? That's Vairagya. Shri, because they're doing something in the arts. And Gyan, because their songs are philosophical. So the things that are most important to them are Shri, Gyan, and Vairagya. You all understand this? Yes? Okay. Then we're going to look at the fields of work. So Krishna, we're not going to go into this in depth. I'm in the process of writing a book on this topic with a co-author, so next time I come, Krishna will. But to look at the fields of work. So Krishna takes all of the careers in the world and puts them into 4 fields. One is the field of ideas, one is the field of government, another is the field of resources, and another is the field of artistry. So obviously the people in the field of ideas must like the richness of Gyan. These are the people who work as teachers, scientists, religious leaders, government advisors. I'd rather not use that word. I'm quite intentionally not using that word. Why am I not using that word? Because people already have some particular mental association with that. And that particular mental association may be preventing you from seeing what it is clearly. You understand? Yes? Okay. Then there's the field of government. So that should be fairly obvious, right? Government works on a local level, a state level, a federal level. And people in the field of government are interested in helping people on a large scale with their material and spiritual needs. What kind of richness do you think they really appreciate? Aishvarya, definitely. And also yasha. Because people in the field of government, they're the ones taking care of the whole community of mankind. Then there's people in the field of resources. These are the people they're the only people in society who generate wealth for the society. Everyone else just moves it around. But the people in the field of resources, they take the natural resources of the planet and convert that into wealth of clothing, food, medicines, fabric, microphone stands, metal cups, right? Everything. So these are people who are also concerned about helping people, generally on a large scale, and they're looking at the flow of resources, and they want to increase them. And a lot of their motivation is to channel some of that flow of resources to themselves. They understand that for something to be sustainable, they have to help themselves first, for which they get criticized a lot by people in the other fields. But without helping them, without putting on their own oxygen mask, they can't give anybody else oxygen. So they make sure that they're prosperous so they can make sure that the whole society is prosperous. And these people are particularly interested in increase. So what do you think that they're interested in as far as the opulences? Vairagya. These are the people who bring health and strength to the society. And then there's the field of artistry. So without the field of artistry, there's no rasa in society. Rasa means pleasure, enjoyment, taste. The people in the field of artistry are responsible for all the music, all the dance, all the painting. All the beauty in the world comes from people in this field. Even the people who are cleaning the streets are making it beautiful. And they're the ones who make everything work. They provide all the beauty and all the function in society. And they're also interested in helping people, but kind of on a more personal level. People in the field of artistry tend to be more satisfied with a simple life, as do people in the field of ideas. People in the field of ideas and people in the field of artistry both tend to be very satisfied people for different reasons, for very, very different reasons. But they both tend to be very satisfied people, whereas people in the field of government and people in the field of resources tend to have an unquenchable thirst for expansion. Now, the motto for people in the field of ideas, the most important questions they ask about what they do are, is it true? Is it wise? For people in the field of government, the most important questions they ask about what they do is it just? In other words, is there justice? Is it honorable? In other words, is it ethical? Am I promoting justice? Am I promoting ethics? The most important questions people in the field of resources ask are, is it sustainable? Is it regenerative? And the most important questions people in the field of artistry ask is it beautiful? Is it supportive? So one can think, what's most important to me? Okay, I want things to be true and wise and just and ethical and sustainable and regenerative and beautiful and supportive. But what's most important to me? If I have to choose between those sets of questions, what do I have to have? And if I don't have that, I just can't even function. So we've looked a lot about nature. Each of us has a nature. We have a nature in terms of, would we rather be with people or get things done? We have a nature in terms of, are we cautious or are we risk-taking? We have a nature in terms of how we define prosperity in our lives. We have a nature in terms of the main questions and the main way of acting with the world that motivate us to want to work in the world. Now, our job as parents and teachers of children is to find that nature in our child and then put them in a track where they can live and work according to that nature. And Krishna wants our way of maintaining ourselves to be linked with that nature. Krishna does not want that you have a job that has nothing to do with who you are and nothing to do with your nature, just so you can make money, and then you do your nature as a hobby, or you're frustrated. That's not what he wants. He wants us to take who we are in this life, our temporary nature, and he wants us to connect that with livelihood and connect that with service. How do you find your child's nature? We don't have enough time to talk about this in depth, but to look at these questions that I've asked you about yourselves and apply that to your child. And please remember that no nature is good or bad. They're all neutral. They're all neutral. It depends how you use them. You can use yasha for good and for bad. You can be a wonderful government worker who helps millions of people, or you can be a corrupt government worker who steals all their money, right? It's not that government is bad. It's not that agriculture is bad, or agriculture is good, or it depends what you do with it. If you're an agriculturist by pouring chemicals into the land and the water, that's bad. Does this make sense to everybody? And your children might not have the same nature as you. Oh, my dear. And we tend to think our nature is good. That's just natural. So if our children are different, we might tend to think that they're bad. You know, if you love Vairagya and your kid loves Aishwarya, like, what's wrong with you? You're completely in Maya. Or the other way, you know, if you like Aishwarya and your kid likes Vairagya, get out, be a leader. I'm kind of happy just here, you know. I was actually talking to a family like that. Very, very amazing child this family has. Amazing child. His father was teaching, I'm not making this up, his father was teaching puja and the proper mantras for puja, and then his father had to get called away to another meeting. And the son, at 3 years old, took over the class. But this kid asked his parents, he said, Lord Chaitanya's movement is a preaching movement, right? They said, yes. They said, are any of his followers Babajis? Because I'd rather be a Babaji. He doesn't really care much about making friends. He's happy with 1 or 2 friends. In other words, he doesn't care about Yasha. His whole thing is Gyan and Vairagya. Right? And his parents have big leadership positions. Like, come on, come on. And he's like, I don't really care. What's wrong with you? Get out there. Get up on the stage. He's like, I don't want to go on the stage. And it can go the other way. You know, you have a kid who's always showing off, right? Always center stage. You're like, stop showing off. Stop showing off. Maybe they're into Shri and Yasa. Let them learn acting. Does this make sense? Or you have a kid who's always telling everybody else what to do and always, you know, they never notice what they're doing. They notice what everybody else is doing. Why don't you mind your own business? Just can't you mind your own business? What is wrong with you? Maybe they enjoy Aishwarya. Put them in charge of something and people and they just flourish. If you say, what do you like to, oh, I want to make sure everybody has prasadam and everybody has a place to stay and... Your child's nature cannot be repressed, therefore it is always going to be there no matter what you do. You cannot punish your child's nature out of them. You cannot reward it out of them. You cannot berate it out of them. It's there. Now, if you try to punish and reward it out of them and berate it out of them, you will find their nature to be annoying. And in fact, many times, the thing that annoys us most about children is simply a not properly utilized nature. The child who always asks you a million, billion, gazillion questions. Can you please be quiet? So I don't know if I told you this before, but I'll tell you a story just about myself, and I'll end here because it's almost 9 o'clock. So my nature was very apparent from the time I was 3, as is true with almost all children. So I went to preschool when I was 3, and my teachers complained to my parents about a behavior of mine. And my whole life growing up, whenever I would act that way, which was frequently because it's my nature, my parents would rebuke me for it and criticize me for it and tell me to stop it. What do you think I did when I was 3 years old that my teachers in school did not like, that was indicative of my nature?
Asking questions.
Huh?
Asking questions.
Yeah, asking questions, but more than that.
Talking a lot.
Talking a lot. It's funny, everybody always says that.
Arguing with them.
Whenever I bring this up about myself, talking a lot. Yeah.
Arguing with them.
Not exactly arguing with them.
Explain yourself.
Inattentive.
I was doing what with them? I was telling them how to... What was I telling them what to do? How to teach. They said, your daughter refuses to be a student. She's always leaving the other kids, coming to us teachers and telling us how to teach. And she's always trying to teach the other kids. And my parents and my teachers thought this was a very serious problem. My whole life. Stop being a teacher. It never occurred to them that maybe I'm a teacher. I mean, we're laughing at it, but how unfortunate that it took me till I was 24 years old to find out that I was a teacher. And I thought there was something wrong with me. Okay? I didn't like who I was. That's pretty sad, isn't it? But it's very, very common. It's very common that the child's nature will show up as something that the parents and the teachers will criticize. Should I end now or should I give you another example? Like another example? So when I was an administrator in a government school, and I wish these weren't true stories, I really do. I really wish I was making these up, but these are actually stories, are true stories. So I was a teacher in a government school. There was a principal, actually, was in charge of the school. So one of the teachers complained to me about one of the kids. She wanted a conference with the parents because this was a really misbehaved child. So what's the problem? She said, well, whenever a guest comes to the door, he jumps up and runs to the guests and welcomes them to the room and disrupts the whole class. And whenever another child's pencil breaks, he jumps out of his seat, runs over to them, grabs their pencil, and sharpens it. And whenever any kid is having a problem, he jumps out of his seat, runs over to them, and helps them. And I'm always telling him, I'm the teacher. I have the degree. Sit down. And we had a conference with the parents. And the child was recommended for counseling and therapy. I'm serious. And I said to the teacher, why don't you make this child the official class helper? You know, give him a title. And then train him how to help the other students. And you can make him the official guest greeter. And train him how to greet the guests. You know, use it properly. No, he's just a problem. I actually couldn't do anything about it. This is very typical. There is one case you can, I forget the guy's name, unfortunately, but it's a very watched video on YouTube. So this kid, when he was in school, was always doing this. And constantly getting into trouble. He was always being sent to the principal's office. He was always being suspended from school. His parents were always getting on his case. And one day, one teacher handed him a pair of drumsticks. He's a very famous musician today. And a top inspirational speaker besides it. He had to go till he was like 11, 12 years old. Constantly getting into trouble, constantly being criticized. So your child's nature most likely shows up as something that you find mildly annoying or greatly annoying unless you and your child have the identical nature and you can relate to it. But our nature is something we cannot repress. We cannot repress. And all bad behavior is a nature misused. There's not really such a thing as a positive evil. All of what's bad, difficult, uncomfortable, harmful is simply misused nature. That's all it is. There's nothing else. It's taking something that's meant for good, that's meant for Krishna's service, that's meant to contribute to society, and using it poorly. And one of our most important jobs as parents is to find our child's nature, to identify it, to work with it, to grow it, to nourish it. I think it should be obvious that we should be doing this with the adult devotees as well. Imagine an ISKCON society where everybody was engaged in service according to their nature. We would have people banging down the doors to join our movement. Isn't it? Right? And if we could train people to find their nature and find how to use it properly. So, it's after 9 o'clock tonight. I don't have the time to go. I'm sure you all have 1,000 questions. I am working on a book with another devotee named Rukmini, Dr. Ruchira Datta, on spiritualizing career. And we look at how to identify your nature, how to nourish your nature, and how to use your nature in the world in such a way that the earth becomes peaceful and prosperous, and everybody also attains Krishna Prema. And this one key of using our nature properly in service is so extremely important. We can say it's one of the most essential and pivotal teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. And I think everybody would like a life where who they are can be expressed in a way that brings themselves and others happiness. Yes, wouldn't we all like that? That we're bringing happiness and prosperity to others and ourselves by who we are uniquely. And we all want that because it ultimately exists in the spiritual world. That we have a unique relationship with Krishna that brings him and everyone else happiness. But even in this world, we have a way of contributing that is perfect for us. That we feel, yes, this is where I belong. This is where I'm happy. That we look at our life and we don't see difficulties. That the so-called difficulties in our life are pleasurable for us. Because they're part of the way we're using our nature in service. If we feel that there's a lot of difficulties in our life, with how we're living, with our job, then we're not engaged properly according to our nature. If we give our children this gift, they are very likely to stay in Krishna consciousness as teenagers and young adults. Find their nature, encourage it, nourish it, and show them how to use it in Krishna's service and for their own happiness and prosperity in the world. Anyone who shows you how to do that, you will want to work with them and you'll be grateful to them. Isn't that a fact? Yes. And then we'd have a whole society, not only of very happy people, but of people using their talents in the service of the Lord. We'll end with this quote. Prabhupada said, Krishna has given everyone something extraordinary, and to serve Krishna with one's extraordinary talent means successful life. Okay, so just to review what we went over, we talked about how in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says real happiness comes from regular connection with the Lord, according to the scriptures. From finding inner satisfaction and self-control by giving up attachment and aversion, by seeing our material thoughts, emotions, etc. as Vrindavan monkeys, and becoming equipoised and connected with the Lord for the purpose of love. We talked about holistic education, making sure that our children aren't just successful in their physical life and in their intellectual life, their financial life, their family life, but also in their spiritual life. And then we talked about finding one's nature and using that in service. So thank you very much. I hope that this was helpful to you. I hope it opens up so many more questions and inquisitiveness that you can go and develop this further. Srila Prabhupada, ki jai.